Okay, we're live. Hi, this is William Ramsey. Welcome to William Ramsey Investigates. On today's show, I have a very special guest. His name is Michael D. Knox. He just published a book, January 2021. Title of the book is Ending U.S. Wars by Honoring Americans Who Work for Peace. I think it's a very important book, very timely book, considering recent events in Afghanistan. And we're going to talk about the culture that leads to all of these foreign wars and the U.S. wars that have been going on. I think the United States has only had 22 years of peace since its foundation. So we're going to talk about what leads to that. But Dr. Knox can talk more about that. So, Michael Knox, are you there?
Yes, I am. Thank you, William, for having me.
Yes, well, thanks for agreeing to the interview. For people who may not have heard your background or this project that you have for a national monument and the U.S. Peace Registry, can you talk about your background and what led you to write the book, Ending U.S. Wars?
Well, I'm by training a clinical psychologist. I worked as a professor until I retired in 2011. And in 2005, I took my son, James, to Washington, and we visited the National Mall and saw a lot of the national monuments, which I'd seen many times, but I was conducting a tour basically as a tour guide, and made me question things a little deeper. And I began to realize that I was seeing war monument after war monument after war monument, and even individuals who were depicted in statuary, often they were carrying a sword or a spear or a bow and arrow or a pistol or some weapon, and we could find nothing on the mall or any public property that related to peace and to the courageous Americans who have worked for peace. And so I started thinking in 2005 about the need for a U.S. Peace Memorial, and created the U.S. Peace Memorial Foundation. And basically our nation began in war. We have a long history of waging war, from the native peoples that we decimated, the American Army, U.S. Army decimated, to recent bombings of poor people living in underdeveloped Middle East, Africa. End of World War II, killing millions of people, maiming tens of millions more, disrupting and destroying education, healthcare, housing, businesses. Since 1946, no other country has killed and injured more people living outside of its borders. And I don't think many Americans realize how much of a war culture that we have. Since 9/11, our military and CIA have bombed and killed and wounded people and made refugees of people in Afghanistan and Pakistan, Iraq, Somalia, Libya, Yemen, Syria. And basically, as we're seeing now with the end or supposed end of the war in Afghanistan, it creates tremendous numbers of refugees. All of these bombings do. And this is a crisis that the world is going to be facing for many, many years. I personally don't think the war in Afghanistan is over. I think that it's just public relations. In reality, we'll continue to bomb, but we'll just fly a little bit farther. We'll fly the airplanes and the drones a little farther, just like we did last week when we bombed Yemen and Somalia. We don't have bases there. We don't need bases there. But we'll continue to kill there. So with this long history and culture of war, I started thinking about what reinforces that, basically from my background as a psychologist. And I think citizens and politicians feel compelled to honor soldiers. And they feel much less likely to criticize war if they hold soldiers up as heroes. I mean, that's one reason we have all of these monuments to soldiers, even Confederate soldiers, all around the country. And it's part of the culture of war and sustaining it and reinforcing it. So I think we need to ask ourselves, why aren't we recognizing teachers and healthcare providers and parents and grandparents and volunteers and farmers and salespeople and government employees, everyone who's part of the fabric of our community. But instead of doing that, we often, in any event you attend, any place you go. I recently went to SeaWorld in Busch Gardens. They have military displays there. Even before the killer whale demonstrations, they had a big tribute to the military. And our schools have military recruiters in them. Our, sports events, often they will have halftime shows dedicated to the military. And this is all part of reinforcing the culture of war, making sure that people never criticize war, because to criticize war or militarization is really to criticize our soldiers and our veterans, and nobody would ever want to do that. So
it's unpatriotic too, right? So it's supposedly unpatriotic to criticize this one element of our own government, but this war culture has shifted. Certainly since 9/11, I think it's very timely, but it shifted so much of our resources to these meddlings all the way around the world. Like, we're really a global empire. It's kind of a Pax Americana, like Pax Romana, but we just continue our bombing. It's kind of like a perpetual war. I've had other guests on about that. And can you talk kind of about the financial costs of these wars that are ongoing all around the world?
Well, we're hearing more and more about that. In fact, last week, the Pentagon budget's interesting that President Biden's budget, just like President Trump's budget for the military, when Congress reacted to that budget, in both cases, including last week after the supposed end of the war in Afghanistan, the Congress, Democrats and Republicans joined together to put more money into the Pentagon, more than either president had asked for. I think this year it was $23 million, and $1 billion more than had been requested. So we're talking about trillions of dollars. Although the military budget may be in the range of 750 billion, the CIA actually is responsible for about 50% of the drone attacks in our war, and a huge unknowable budget. So I would say the cost is about $1 trillion a year, certainly more than if you add everything else up that might be important, healthcare and
Right,
education and everything else. It doesn't add up to what we spend on wars.
It really is incredible how much we spend on wars. I mean, and I do think Orwell was right. This war culture solidifies the social structure of any government. So you always got to keep the people poor. And I think that's really what the budget does. And I think that both parties are shamelessly involved in wasting all this money. It's really incredible how tolerant Americans really are. I guess you have to propagandize them about the war on terror to justify these gargantuan expenditures. But yeah, it's all part of this culture.
It is propaganda, and you don't have to look very deep. You don't even have to be very intelligent or to read much in the way of the news media to realize that things like the invasion of Iraq for weapons of mass destruction was clearly not a legitimate reason for invading another country. If you want to see the country with the most weapons of mass destruction in the world, in fact, more weapons than the next 10 nations combined, it's the United States of America. We have more nuclear weapons. We've used the nuclear weapons. We use and have chemical weapons. We have biological weapons that we're developing all the time. You may remember after 9/11, the anthrax scare, all of that anthrax was traced back through DNA to the U.S. Army.
Yeah, it was Fort Detrick, right? Like the biological weapons facility. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So super weaponized the anthrax.
And in terms of Afghanistan, you don't need to be very intelligent to realize what was going on there. 16 or 17 of the criminals involved in 9/11 were traveling on Saudi passports. They were Saudi citizens. Osama bin Laden's money came from Saudi Arabia. They were given basically shelter in Florida for many months. They were trained. The only two skills they needed to have, they didn't learn in Afghanistan. They learned in Florida. They learned how to fly an airplane into a building in Florida, and they learned how to use a cell phone, a skill which they didn't have before they arrived here, so they could communicate with each other. So obviously we weren't going to bomb Florida, and Afghanistan had absolutely nothing to do with 9/11.
Either did Iraq, but they certainly wanted to tie 9/11 to Iraq. I mean, this is going back
exactly
18 years.
And if you think about, I mean, I was around during the various wars of Vietnam and Iraq, and I mean, Vietnam and Cambodia and Laos. I still to this day cannot understand the rationale for why we had to kill millions of people in Asia and Southeast Asia. I don't understand it. And I'm afraid that now that we claim we've ended the Afghanistan war, that we will start picking a war with China and or maybe North Korea again, or Iran, which hasn't invaded any other countries. China hasn't invaded any other countries, but we're determined to put the world at risk. And Biden's budget actually asked for another $30 billion to develop new nuclear weapons, if you can imagine that. But I did want to talk, about my book, Ending U.S. Wars by Honoring Americans Who Work for Peace, because I think that's the way to change our peace culture. We need to encourage your audience to go to uspeacememorial.org, our website, look at the information about what we're doing by honoring people. We have a U.S. Peace Registry where we document the specific work that hundreds of people, Americans and organizations, have done for peace and to end war. We're trying to create role models. We've got the military role models. They're in all the movies. They're in the, they come to the schools and impress the young children. But we need peace role models. And so we have documented the work of hundreds of people that we honor in the U.S. Peace Registry, which is part of my book, Ending U.S. Wars. And we give an annual U.S. Peace Prize to a person from within the U.S. Peace Registry, a person or organization that's done the most that we feel for peace. Many of those people have military backgrounds. In fact, Veterans for Peace is one of the organizations that was awarded the U.S. Peace Prize. And we've done that. This is our 13th year of giving the U.S. Peace Prize, and most Americans aren't even aware of that. They look to the Nobel Peace Prize. Well, we don't need to look to the Norwegian Parliament to make decisions about who's worthy of a peace prize. People like Kissinger and Obama. When we have our own U.S. Peace Prize, which is supported by the U.S. Peace Memorial Foundation. And so we have the U.S. Peace Registry, the U.S. Peace Prize, and then we're raising funds to build a national monument in Washington, D.C. that will help to change our culture, because people will then understand that it's socially acceptable to speak out against war. They see a national monument, they see quotations from famous Americans, many U.S. presidents and cultural icons, people like Margaret Mead and Martin Luther King Jr. and Muhammad Ali, quotes from Einstein, who said, "I believe that the killing of human beings in a war is no better than common murder." And there are strong statements from people that everyone will have read about, people like Helen Keller, but be so shocked by their strong anti-war statements. And
you never hear that on the corporate media. So,
no,
you never,
No, and President Kennedy, who of course has many faults, but one thing that he said early in his career was that war will exist until that distant day when the conscientious objector enjoys the same reputation and prestige that the warrior does today. So basically that is, it could be the basis for our argument here, that and an anti-war activist, once their reputation and prestige is elevated to where it needs to be so that they are honored by our culture, that their prestige is the same as the soldier, then we can look for legitimate arguments where the causes of peace can be argued at the same time that the causes of war or the voices of war are being heard.
Right. And I mean, it is remarkable. We have so many people that are Americans that have, made statements or done things against war, but their history of that is really kind of drowned out by so many people, warmongers and things like that. Yeah.
It's lost. And that's why this monument, which will actually have electronically available the listings of, we have currently 900 specific anti-war behaviors people have engaged in, hundreds of people. Those will all be documented at the monument. So these people, these living people, are honored, and then it will be covered with quotations from famous Americans where everyone will know the name of the American but be shocked by the strong anti-war quote. And that can change our culture so that people realize, well, it must be socially acceptable to speak out against war. And if we can encourage people to start honoring everyone who makes a contribution to our country, not just the soldiers, then I think we can take a big step towards questioning our military budget and questioning why we're invading country after country. These countries have not invaded us. No country has invaded us in my lifetime, and yet we've killed millions of people around the world.
Right, and if the thing is, Americans are in a fishbowl. They don't realize the opinion of our country from smaller countries around the world. They don't understand, like, we have this fiction of Russia being a threat, but it's a non-existent threat. But there are other countries who view America as the biggest bully of its era. Really, it's like there's a potential they could get invaded. Look at Libya, Syria. We've been in so many countries. Yeah, it's just incredible.
Exactly. And we lose these wars. So you have to wonder. I mean, obviously we lost the war in Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia, the war in Iraq. We're out of there. We barely got out. Afghanistan, I guess we're out of that. We're just going to bomb from a distance now. Libya was another one. Obama engaged in basically a shock and awe of Libya, but it wasn't even covered by the media. They bombed Tripoli. They just like Bush bombed Baghdad. They bombed where the people live, residents. They killed old people and children and women and non-combatants. These were just residential areas, not military bases. The idea was to bring Libya to its knees with the might of the U.S. government. And hopefully we'll never attempt something like that with Russia or China. That will be the end of the world, in my opinion. We need America to wake up and realize, and our citizens to stop electing these warmongers, Republicans and Democrats who take bribes from the war industry. We politely call them campaign contributions, but they are no less than bribes to be sure that these politicians continue to funnel money into the military-industrial complex.
Right. It's the original warning of Eisenhower, right? So all that came true.
Exactly. But, yeah, it certainly did. So I hope your listeners will consider looking at the U.S. Peace Memorial Foundation and uspeacememorial.org, our website. Consider reading my book online or however you wish to. A lot of it's on the website, but it's Ending U.S. Wars.
Ending U.S. Wars. So you have the National Monument. You've got the U.S. Peace Registry. Can you talk about some of the people that you've honored from your group with?
Well, as there have been 12 recipients so far. Last year it was Christine Ahn for bold activism to end the Korean War, heal its wounds, and promote women's roles in peace building. She's the head of a group called Women Across the DMZ, and very active in getting North and South Korea normalizing relations, ending the U.S. war there. In 2019, it was Ajamu Baraka. He's the national organizer of Black Alliance for Peace, and he was given the award for bold anti-war actions and writings and speeches, and his leadership, just providing an inspiring voice against militarism. And in previous years, we've had people like David Swanson, the founder, one of the founders of World Beyond War, and Anne Wright, who is a former Army colonel and diplomat who resigned because of the U.S. War in the Middle East. Anne Wright, Veterans for Peace. Code Pink is another recipient. That's Women for Peace. Noam Chomsky, who most people know, is written for nearly 6 decades, brilliant anti-war analyses. The former Bradley Manning, now Chelsea Manning, who revealed, the U.S. war crimes, basically. I don't know, you can still see some of those videos of U.S. war crimes online, where basically we just kill civilians almost like a game. Chelsea
like a video
Manning,
game, video game.
Congressman, former Congressman Dennis Kucinich won the award in 2010. Introduced an awful lot of anti-war legislation and tried to reduce the Pentagon budget. Cindy Sheehan, everyone's familiar with her, won the award in 2009. Became very active after her son was killed in war. It's a distinguished group. People like Medea Benjamin, and who founded Code Pink. I'm probably missing a few names, but I apologize if I am.
You've got a lot of them. Yeah, Kathy
Kelly. Yeah, Kathy Kelly, exactly. Who's actually put her life on the line many times in Afghanistan to keep the U.S. military from beating up or killing Afghani families. We have American heroes. And when I started this, I'm a university professor, I started asking my students, can you think of any anti-war hero, American anti-war hero? And, just silence. And someone said Gandhi, and I said, well, he's from India.
Right.
So if you press them hard, they will remember that Martin Luther King Jr. did speak out against the Vietnam War, but they don't know other names. So our mission is to elevate these people like Muhammad Ali, who said, no, I'm not going 10,000 miles to help murder, kill, and burn other people to simply help continue the domination of white slave masters over dark people. He said that when he evaded the draft or refused to be drafted. So it showed tremendous courage. So we have lots of people that we honor, and we want to elevate their names and their prestige, so we can show, especially young people, that there are role models out there for opposing one or more wars. And I have to say, we're not necessarily against all wars. We have many people that we've honored who have fought in wars. Tulsi Gabbard is an example of someone. She was nominated for the U.S. Peace Prize last year when she was a member of Congress, and also a major in the military. It doesn't matter if you're a pacifist or not. What matters is that you have the courage to speak out against any war, any bombing of people that doesn't make sense to you, and demand accountability.
Right. A lot of the people who are anti-war activists who want to end the war were in some of these wars. They become the most anti-war activists out there, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. So I just hope that people will take a look at uspeacememorial.org and consider joining us as founding members. We're not going really public with the national media until we have 1,000 members representing all 50 states. And we list all of our members that are well, about 450 right now from 46 states, plus Washington, D.C., Puerto Rico, and the U.S. Virgin Islands. So, we need another, over 500 more to get to the 1,000, but we wanted to have 1,000 founding members representing all 50 states before we really went public to the mainstream media. That's something that we have to build. Raising funds for a national monument is very expensive.
And you're expecting to spend a significant amount of money, and you're also a nonprofit, right? So it's a 501c3.
Yeah, it's a 501c3, not for profit. Yes. And we have many donors. We honor them in our annual report and on our website. Many people have had their distributions from their IRAs sent directly to us, so they don't have to pay taxes that contribute to more funding for the military. And there are many ways that you can contribute. We also have a volunteer program that you can read about on our website.
And what can you describe for the audience what the National Peace Registry is?
Yes, well, the U.S. Peace Registry documents the work of hundreds of Americans in U.S. organizations that have worked for peace and against war. So we have documented what exactly they've done in behaviorally specific terms, like they founded an organization, they chained themselves to the White House fence demanding an end to the war in Afghanistan. They wrote a letter to the editor of their local newspaper or an op-ed article. And we have links in the U.S. Peace Registry and on our website where you can see the U.S. Peace Registry, a link so that you can read an article someone wrote or see a TV interview that they gave in opposition to war or see a piece of legislation. We have several members of Congress, former members of Congress, who introduced legislation. So there are about 900 specific behaviors that we have documented. Many of them have hot links, so you can actually go and look at what the person did, and hopefully be inspired from them and get some ideas of what you might do if you oppose war. You might not want to do civil disobedience, but you might want to write a letter to your editor or a letter to your member of Congress. You might want to join anti-war organizations, become a founding member of the U.S. Peace Memorial Foundation. There's just lots of things you can do. There are people that will hold a sign like "End the War in Afghanistan," or which I think will be continuing. On a bridge over an interstate, they'll hold a big sign up. China is not our enemy is one I've seen recently. China is not our enemy. To try to convince people. These are things that usually you won't, have trouble with the police for doing, and will show public support, holding signs on the street corner. We have yard signs that people put in their yard saying "End the wars." So anyway, there are hundreds of examples here and hundreds of people and organizations. We're trying to connect people and hold them up as role models so that people will see that there are things they can do, and there really are national heroes that have opposed war. And we even describe what some of the consequences of their opposition have been, so people understand what those might be.
Right, and so you have those lists in there. Where's the best place for people to get this book, Ending U.S. Wars?
Well, I don't want to say Amazon is the best, but if you go to Amazon and look up "Ending U.S. Wars" by Honoring Americans who Work for Peace, you will be able to read the first 40 pages for free where it says "Look Inside." So, but Barnes and Noble has it, and if you go to our homepage, you can click on the picture of the book, and it will give you, I think, Powell's Bookstore. There are about 7 or 8 different bookstores that carry it nationwide. Books A Million. There are all kinds of opportunities to order the book, and it's available in hardcover, which is a really nice looking a beautiful book, soft cover, and then Kindle or EPUB. So you can get it in any format you want.
And you have, in the best website to check out the Peace Memorial is www.uspeacememorial.org. Is that correct?
That's correct. And no periods on the US, just uspeacememorial.org. Correct.
Yeah, and where's the best way to contact you or reach out? Do you have social media, or is it the website?
Well, I don't mind emails. My email address is Knox, Knox, at uspeacememorial.org. So it's the same as the website, Knox at uspeacememorial.org. But we also have, you can see on our homepage, we have Twitter accounts, we have, Instagram, we have Facebook, and there's a YouTube account. You can see all kinds of stuff, including presentations of the U.S. Peace Prize that were held before large audiences in different venues. So, yeah, so there's access to the U.S. Peace Prize, all that information, to the U.S. Peace Registry, to quotations that are on our website too, the quotations that we're proposing to our founding members that be considered to be on the monument once it's built. We have, of course, a donate button and lots of information about the book and about us and our board of directors and how the idea initially developed. And you can read the introduction to the book there too.
Right. And again, the title of the book is Ending U.S. Wars by Honoring Americans Who Work for Peace by Michael D. Knox, PhD. Thank you so much for your time, Mike.
Thank you very much, William. I really appreciate the opportunity.
All right, take care.
Bye.
My pleasure. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, stay there.